My name's Debbie Reeder, and I'm the career specialist for West Valley School District. And I'm here with Randall. He's a game developer, and I got to meet Randall years and years ago. He is dynamic, and every time I've had him talk to students, he ignites something new in the students and probably the teachers that he speaks to. So I'm going to let him introduce himself, and then I'm going to ask him a few questions, and we're going to have a little discussion here about game development. So Randall, if you want to introduce yourself, tell a little bit
Yeah,
about yourself.
I'm Randall, and I'm a game developer. This is my office. I've got video games back here. I've got Lego up there. I have lots of art books in my office. Um, I love art, so that's why I actually pursued a career in game development because it really pursues my passions of programming, animation, art. So that's pretty much what I do. I've been doing it for professionally for about 20 years now. I was one of the grandfathers of mobile development. Mobile development was in its infancy back in 2000 when I started. So they didn't even have cell phones back then. That was a new thing that came along almost a decade later. And mobile development is mostly exclusively what I do now.
So we just had a discussion before we got on the record here online and talking about that it's a new industry, fairly new. I mean, as far as it's not 100 years old or whatever. And there's you see that there's a potential for more women to get involved in the game app or the design and the game development, and also just bringing it to so that more students know about this industry. So what are some of the things that, if you were talking to a group of students, that you might point out as somebody that might do really well in this industry or enjoy this industry?
Boy, first of all, it would be helpful if you loved video games. And we're seeing more and more women and girls playing video games nowadays, which one of the reasons why we need a lot more women active in game development. We're seeing a big gap there, and we would like to close that gap and have them a lot more involved, and because they can come up with interesting, fun, new ideas and ways of doing things that are slightly different. They bring a lot of new things to the table for us. Um, so, what what can they? Well, I forgot what the question was now.
So if there's a whole group of students and you were telling them what are the benefits of gaming and then or game development or in some of the things that you would look for skill set, I guess.
Boy, game development is so wide. It encompasses programming, and even programming by itself is uh, integrated in different subtasks. There's server engineering, which is like a back end, very high paying job. There's front end development, there's UI development, there's animation development, there's tech art. Those all involve programming. On the design side, there's character design, there's environment design, there's UI and UX design, which is what I mainly do right now is UI and UX. That's designing all the screens that you see and all the little icons and stuff that pop up. There's also 3D development, so you can model things in 3D. And then there's animation for 3D, so that's like a totally separate task. You don't need to be able to model in 3D in order to animate for 3D. You can be just an animator by itself. There is writing, so you write stories for the games. You can do sound and music for games. There's even, for people who like to just manage and organize things, there's producers. So what a producer does is they basically get all the stuff organized to develop the game, and they say, hey, this is what we need for the game, and this is what we have available to help build that game. So it's a huge, wide open, a lot of different disciplines coming into it. So game development isn't just one avenue to get into it. There's several ways to jump into game development, and really just think about what your passions are, what you really like. We even have on our staff, we have a guy who's super great at numbers. Like he just loves numbers so much, and he's crazy about them. And all his whole job is to do spreadsheets and bar graphs. So every day we see just all this data compiled, and he gets super excited about showing us these numbers that he came up with and shows us, look, we did really great this day. We sold this many copies this morning, and these numbers are jumping up high because we did this. And if you look at this number over here, so as somebody who's just passionate about numbers, that's really, it's foreign to me, but he's super excited about it, and he's in game development as well. So it's wide open.
So I know we just had you talking to some fifth graders, and you said, I didn't go to college, but I would really advise against it, advise it going to college, because it's a way to get into the industry and learn as much as you can while you're doing the game development as well. So is this something that while you're going to college, you can still learn about on your own and do some work? You talked about even some younger kids doing some game development. What kind of industry is this, or how to get into the industry if you're a high school senior and thinking about it?
So as a high school senior, right now, you can actually develop a game and release it as an indie. You don't need a publisher. You actually don't even need any money to even release a game. All you just need to do is have the passion for it and the knowledge, and do a lot of studying and figuring out how to do it. And at that point, you can actually start developing your own game as a high schooler and release it. And maybe it won't make a ton of money, but at least you have that skill, you have that experience. And that's a huge heads up. If you can get into college already releasing a game, you're way ahead of a lot of people that are in college already. So I'd totally advise that you start development as early as possible. Study and learn how all of these different games work, figure out where your niche is, what your passions are, what you really want to do, and work on those things. And just keep building. Even if you fail, even if your game never makes it to market. I fail 1,000 times a day. Like, failure is a normal part of my job, but out of those 1,000 failures, I have that one thing that I'm like, yeah, okay, this works. This is fantastic. This is great. This is going in the game. And so that's the thing that I'm super excited about, is the failures all are learning experiences. So don't take those too hard. You're going to fail a lot, and that's great. That's the way it probably should be. Um, and college, yes, definitely take college. That wasn't a an avenue for me. It wasn't even a reality, because game development back in 1988 was not a real thing. It wasn't a real job, so it wasn't available. If I was a young person now, college will definitely teach me things faster, because it took me a decade to learn game development throughout my whole 20s, from 21 years old to 29 years old. Um, I had to learn game development on my own and study a lot online and figure things out. In college, you can do that all in 2 years or even less in some cases. It's pretty rare. I don't think a career in a game development course is 4 years. I think it's just a 2 or 3 year program. But you can learn very quickly. You also have access to a lot of tools, a lot of programs. You have access to people who are knowledgeable about the industry, and they can tell you the ins and outs and how to get a job in that as well.
So can you talk about some of the things that you've done? And you talked about 1988. So what have you done since you started getting involved in game development? Can you talk a little bit about it?
Boy, my first real experience in game development as an indie developer, we released a game in 2000, which is 21 years now, 21 years ago. So that was one of the first mobile games to hit the market. So like I said, I'm a grandfather of the mobile industry. Very, very basic technologies back then. Internet was still brand new. Um, so I basically built up from there, learning on the old systems like Palm OS, um, building games for that. And then right around, I don't know, probably 8 years later, iPhone finally came around. And that was really the first big market that I was able to jump into. I went out and bought myself an iPhone and learned how to develop for that. And I built my first game for that one and released it. It did extremely well. The market was really, really small back then. I think there was only maybe 20,000, 40,000 games on there. It's way bigger now. It's a few 100,000 games available. So that was really the first jump into true mobile gaming was the iPhone. And then from there, I jumped into web games. That was building games for websites like Nickelodeon and Disney. So I've animated a lot of Nickelodeon characters. SpongeBob is the most popular one. I've animated a lot of Disney characters, including Marvel. I've animated Spider-Man for games. Um, I've worked for Mattel and animated Barbie and Max Steel for a few of their games. So in the advertising world, I was able to jump in and animate a lot of super popular characters for that. And then after that, I started working for Nerd Ninjas. We actually created this company here in Spokane ourselves because we wanted to take gaming in a different direction. And I do work for Niantic now. We we work for the Niantic Real World platform, which is taking the Pokemon Go engine, and we're retooling it to build a different game around that engine. So we're working in that direction now. I've been doing that for 3 years and working exclusively from home. You know, like I said, this is my office. This is what I do every day. Zoom is a normal part of my everyday life. So nothing new here. COVID really didn't affect me, but boy, it sure affected a lot of other people.
Do you see an increase in people gaming?
Yeah,
Or do
we
you?
actually saw a huge jump in people gaming. And strangely enough, Pokemon Go made $1 billion last year. That is a huge amount of money for one game to make. And in the COVID world, that's even more amazing because Pokemon Go is a geospatial game and it's you walk around in the real world. We Niantic had to figure out a way to make that work with COVID. So they actually started working on other things to push out to make the game more interesting for people who are stuck at home all the time. And so we actually took some cues from that as well. We started developing some new tools and stuff for working on games or playing games from home.
So when people started walking their neighborhoods, they were playing Pokemon a little bit more, huh? Masked up and
Yep.
walking around.
I still see people walking around playing the game. It's kind of funny because I all the time I hear people say, "You remember Pokemon Go? Remember? Well, I wonder what happened to that game." And I just kind of nod my head. Oh man, it's more popular today than it ever was. It's huge.
So, you talk about working from home. And I know when I first met you, worked for a company that you worked with people from all over the world. And so is this industry something that is an 8 to 5 job? Is it, you're out of Spokane where your clients, are they all over the world, all over the nation? How is this industry as far as your kind of your daily work schedule and then the people that you work with?
So I don't. My normal work schedule isn't really 9 to 5. I have the flexibility to define what my work hours really are because I work from home. I need to be present for meetings in the morning, like at a certain time, like 9:30 to 10 o'clock or whatever. Um, and then from there, if I need to go, like go to lunch with my kids or breakfast with my kids, I can go ahead and go do that. And I can just work my hours later if I want to. I just need to be able to make sure that I'm available to answer questions if somebody has any questions. And I kind of set my own schedule. I do try to stick to a strict schedule. I try to work from 9:30 to 5 every day because then that defines my work day. One of the major problems of working from home is that your office is always right there. And if your office is always right there, you have a tendency to always work. And so I break that habit by my office is down in the basement. It's away from the rest of the house. And so when my office hours are over, I just go upstairs and I be with my family. I hang out with them. We go do things. So my office hours, even though they aren't strictly scheduled, I schedule them myself just so that I don't overwork. Because overworking is a very real thing in this industry, and you try not to do it because you'll burn out. Burnout's not a good thing.
Right. Right.
And working around the world with people, yeah, we see people all over the world working. We work with people in all different countries. Sometimes we'll be contacting them and it's 1 in the morning for them because they're in Germany. And then it's like, oh yeah, it's dark here, but I'm still working. So yeah, and it's kind of funny to hear them with their different accents. It's
Yeah,
interesting, but it worked great.
that's great. So I'm just trying to follow my time and my questions that I had for you. I know when I first met you, you talked about that uh, you weren't really looking forward to being a keynote speaker, that wasn't really your forte. And I think that now you've become more accustomed to talking to people and, going out there and inspiring. And I know every time I've had you as a speaker, I leave and people are like, I just want to do that. I want to be. So when you're talking to students, I mean, I work a lot with high school students. What would you tell them to do to get into this industry? And are you available to talk to them if they have questions? Can they get a hold of me and I can get a hold of you and see? Is that a possibility?
The short answer is yes, but I would like to address another point. I'm actually hugely afraid of talking in public. Um, and that is something I will probably never get over. And it affects 75% of the population. Most people are afraid of public speaking. Um, but I've been doing it enough now that at least I can get over it. Um, so that's a major hurdle in game development that you do need to kind of overcome is people looking at your work and criticizing it. You need to be able to show your work confidently and not be afraid of having people scrutinize and tear things apart and saying, oh, maybe we should do this better and not getting your feelings hurt. That's the hardest thing to overcome for someone who's shy like me is to show my work and have people scrutinize it and rip it down. Um, so what was your question
Well,
again?
the other one is that if anybody wanted to get into this industry, would you be willing to email
Oh,
them or
yes.
Zoom with something to answer questions?
Yeah, I actually love working in either in small groups of just a few students to show them. It's much harder now because I work from home. I used to work in a studio where that was a lot easier, but inviting students to my house is kind of not a good idea. But yeah, if we had access to schools and everything, I would love to go to schools and show them how to do things. Working one-on-one is actually great too, because then we can isolate and narrow things down so the kids can show me their artwork and show me what they're interested in doing, and then I can give them feedback on how to push that further and get into game development. Mhm.
Okay, well, thank you. And I think you've always done a great job as a speaker for me. I had no clue when you got up and were keynote speaker for me that you didn't like to do that type of thing.
It was so scary. I remember
Well,
those
they
days, but
love
it was great.
you. So I really appreciate you doing this interview. And I know there's going to be people that want to talk to you or find out more, but hopefully everybody watching this looks at this as a career option. Again, the gaming, and then Randall also talked about behind the scenes. There's other things that you can do in the game development world. And so when you see a game, think of people like Randall behind the scenes, putting all this together and doing the drawings and there's somebody behind the scenes also that loves math, and so doing all of that. So I really appreciate you meeting with us, Randall, and doing this interview. And I know that there's some females out there just wanting to get into this industry, and hopefully they'll look into it a little bit more and fill that gap too. So
Yes,
thank you.
for sure. Thank you.